interesting and more important. First of all, I want to give you a background of why we have been able to build this collaboration. This year, the year of 2024, is a very significant year for India. We are celebrating the 75th anniversary of the adoption of the Constitution of India. On 26 November 1949, the Constitution of India was adopted. It was an extraordinary effort that lasted more than 2.5 years, and approximately, finally, 300 members of the Constitutional Assembly adopted the Constitution. Now, the last 75 years has been quite an extraordinary journey, and so we at OPT Global University felt that it's an appropriate time for us to establish India's first Constitution Museum and the Rights and Freedoms Academy. Now, this is quite interesting because we discovered that India does not have so far a Constitution Museum and a Rights and Freedoms Academy of the kind that the United States has in the form of the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. We recognize that this is a very important opportunity, a historic opportunity, a historic occasion when we can do this. So we embarked on the journey as late as June of this year to establish India's first Constitution Museum. I'm happy to report to you that the last 6 months have been quite an intense effort that involved so many institutions in India and around the world in terms of collection of data, archival information, and both physical and digital information and all of that. I will be sharing with you more information about that as well. But let me talk to you about the objectives of the Constitution Museum. There were 5 important objectives of the Constitution Museum. First, the vision and the purpose of establishing the Constitution Museum essentially was to promote civic education among ordinary people of India. It does not matter whether they are a lawyer or a judge. We want to invest in ideas of civic education, in citizenship, so that people understand and appreciate the history and evolution of the Constitution. The second objective of establishing the Constitution Museum is to democratize the access to Constitution. In some ways, Constitution was historically seen as a document that was confined to the interest of lawyers and judges, that was confined to the interest of law, but we wanted to democratize access to the Constitution, and hence the museum becomes an opportunity for people to understand complex notions of law and Constitution in an easily understandable manner. So there are several installations in the museum which include sculptures and paintings and art forms and a lot of panelings. All those things are essentially put with a view to ensuring that ordinary people are able to connect to the museum. The third objective of the Constitution Museum is to essentially pay tribute to the outstanding 300 members of the Constituent Assembly. I am sure several of us know that some of the leading figures were part of the Constituent Assembly. Dr. Rajendra Prasad was the president of the Constituent Assembly. Pandit Nehru moved the Objectives Resolution, which became the preamble. Sardar Patel played a very significant role in the Constituent Assembly and later became India's first Deputy Prime Minister. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constituent Assembly and hugely credited with the Constitution itself, and later became India's first Law Minister. And you can add a few more names, including Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad and K.M. Munshi and so many others. But that will give you 10, 15 people or so. But there were 300 members. So for the first time in the history of post-independent India, we have paid tribute to all the 300 members of the Constituent Assembly, and the museum essentially protects and celebrates their legacy and contribution, and that is the third objective of the museum. The fourth objective of the museum is essentially to promote civic discourse, surrounding ideas of democracy, rule of law, and the way in which our evolution has transformed the society. In some ways, we have used and we plan to use the museum as an opportunity for engagement intellectually and otherwise, where the museum goers have an opportunity to be part of the academic institution itself. There is something quite significant about the fact that this museum has been built in a university space where ideas are constantly generated. And the last objective of the museum essentially is to recognize the 75 years of the history of the evolution of the Constitution and the rights and freedoms. After the Constitution adopted on 26 November 1949, we have a rich tapestry of events, including the functioning of our democratic institutions, including the courts, the legislation, the parliament, the various debates, the various amendments to the Constitution. All of that is being recorded and presented in a manner that people can understand and appreciate the history as well. These were the 5 objectives on the basis of which we embarked on the journey of establishing India's first Constitution Museum. Another aspect of this whole effort is also to recognize that the Constitution is such a founding and a foundational document that everybody has a stake in it. And how do we build that stakeholdership? The only way by which we can build the stakeholdership is to involve people in developing deeper understanding of the Constitution. Our Constitution is also very flexible. It was born out of the circumstances in which we were essentially coming out of nearly 200 years of colonialism. We were building a new India. And so these aspects were also brought into the museum as well. Now, this of course was all going in that direction. But early on, one of the things that we decided to do was, how do we make the museum interesting, both in terms of the participants and the visitors who come to the museum, but also how we can keep them engaged and involved in the entire museum experience. And so that thought process led to what we consider a very innovative idea, something quite unique and I believe pioneering in the country, which is to have India's first robotic tour guide for the Constitution Museum. Of course, we are a liberal arts and social sciences and humanities university with schools such as law and architecture. We don't have engineering and other such disciplines. So we thought that we should reach out to one of India's premier institution focused in the field of engineering and technology, and that's how we reached out to the IIT Madras. I had a discussion initially with Professor Venkatesh Balasubramaniam, after which we had an opportunity to host the team from IIT Madras. We had visited IIT Madras here, and our team had extensive discussions here, followed by their visit, and of course there was a very interesting collaboration that happened there. So the O.P. Jindal Global University and IIT Madras have come together in this particular aspect of the museum, which is to have India's first robotic tour guide of the museum. Now, why this part of it is interesting? First of all, it's an example of institutional collaboration. IIT Madras is a premier public institution and is also an institution of eminence recognized by the Government of India. O.P. Jindal Global University is a private university, but also an institution of eminence recognized by the Government of India. But unlike IIT, it's a purely liberal arts, humanities, social sciences. Second, the idea that I talked earlier, Constitution is not confined to law. It's about every individual and every institution. The partnership that we have created with IIT Madras to launch the robot as a tour guide in the Constitution Museum is an example of transcending the limited engagement of Constitution with law and legal institutions, and to democratize the access to Constitution beyond the confines of law and legal institutions. this institutional collaboration between OPs of the Global University IIT Madras is an example of that. Third, we not only at a conceptual and at an institutional level collaborated, we ensured that the students are also collaborating with each other. The early aspects of the design was created by some of the students of the Jindal School of Art and Architecture, as well as some of the liberal arts students who are pursuing the BFA program. They in turn connected with the IIT students who were obviously specialists and engineers and specializing in robotic technology, and their conversations, their meetings, their interactions created the foundation for the design of the robot, which you will shortly see, and ultimately led to this collaboration as well. The fourth aspect of this collaboration is also about recognizing that how we can use technology in an interesting and an impactful manner, even when you have a more traditional institution in the form of a museum. Museums are seen to be very old traditional institutions, but we're also signaling another important aspect here, which is about tradition and modernity can go hand in hand, just like India, and how Indian civilization has embraced modernity through its encompassing technologies that have emerged over the years. And the last bit, what I want to say about this collaboration is that we strongly believe that if two institutions in the form of IIT and Jindal can come together in creating this robot, there are many more opportunities for institutional collaborations to emerge between the study of humanities, social sciences, liberal arts, law and sciences, technology, engineering, mathematics and medicine and other such disciplines. It's an example of institutions coming out of pre-existing notions of inertia and reluctance to collaborate. This is an example of public-private partnership. It's an example of institutions coming out of the comfort zone to come out with something new and imaginative. We are very, very excited to be able to unveil the robot here in Chennai. With those words, I'm going to request Professor Venkatesh Balasubramaniam, a distinguished professor at IIT Madras, to share his reflections on the robot and also the collaboration itself. Thank you.
Having a constitution museum. Generally, museum is looked down upon as a place that you go, but museum is a place to look up for various things that are there. So beautifully he had summarized the reason and the rationale of how this first Constitution Museum in independent India after 75 years is getting inaugurated at the Institute of Eminence, Jindal Global University. Around here, he had popped a question of a technology collaboration or something that can be brought up. And in that endeavor is this collaborative approach. Like the Constitution was put by this baby country with a bunch of lawyers and an excellent members of the Constituent Assembly who got together, tried to put a framework of rules under which this nation could progress and reach where we are. Symbolic to that is this collaborative effort, not of professors or faculty and other things, but bunch of students, people as said before, from the Jindal's School of Art and Architecture and Fine Arts, the BFA students and others, who came up with external design, and the technical part of it was from the IBOT, the Center for Innovation at C5 at IIT Madras. We had our students had put together various aspects like a large language model, bring the AI into it, and aspects of it that are new in terms of what can be done. Constitution again was not a perfect document on the day one, and that is something that is always improved and amended to be something of relevance and a guiding framework for all of us. Likewise, this robo is something that is being put together, probably evolving with the large language models and other things that are there. but also be a guide to a large body of people that are going to be viewing these evolution of this constitution through this technological aspect that would be there as a museum board. Now there are many firsts. I mean, friend Professor Paddy will talk about it more in detail. What I wanted to bring across are three essential points that we want to. Putting together a museum, it's easy to go buy a robo and put it in, but planting the seeds of understanding what this constitution is and what it means and how it can be going forward is by the next generation and how they go forward with that. So the endeavor is all about the students who can bring together the bunch of students from various disciplines at IIT Madras and a bunch of students from the arts and the fine arts and the architecture and other things at Jindal together worked on this aspect. There is a display of the logo outside, and I'm sure some of you may get a chance to view physically or virtually once the museum gets inaugurated, and you should appreciate, and we should have many more such museums across the country to celebrate the Constitution, but the first one gets done after 75 years.
All right. I want to say that may I request you to welcome Samvid, the India's first tour guide robot to be present at the Constitution Museum. We are introducing Samvid. We have named the robot as Samvid, which is kind of.
No kids also.
Sir, just you're going to touch the screen.
Sir, looking, sir.
Touch
So
the
the
screen.
hero of it is Samvid, and the bigger hero and heroine are the kids who work to get it done in a very short duration.
Touch the screen, Javite.
Yes, sir. Looking here, sir.
The photo will be 2 minutes wait பண்ணுங்க the screen photo
We're going to show some.
Okay, thank you.